Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Hyperconscious Podcast. Alan, what is hyperconscious?
Once you understand why something is the way that it is, now you have the power to change it. Great conversations with great people and great questions are the keys to the kingdom of unlocking your consciousness.
Every single action that you do starts as a thought. When you control the way you think, you will control the way you act, and you will control the way you live. That is hyperconscious. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another very special, as always, episode of the Hyperconscious Podcast. Today, Alan and I were lucky enough to sit down with Mr. Jesse Elder. He is a philosopher, a coach, a martial artist, an entrepreneur, and a next-level speaker. He actually has millions and millions of views on his Facebook page, as well as his YouTube.
So he started a martial arts gym, brought it from one gym to over 8 gyms, has made millions of dollars. He is not just a philosopher, he has the results to prove it. We went extremely deep on this episode, so we wanted to warn you, buckle in. This is going to be fascinating.
Yes, so when I came up with the name Hyperconscious, I was hoping that I could be as hyperconscious as Jesse. Like Alan said, we go very deep, but you will enjoy it for sure. He added so much value, and he's a great dude, so we hope you'll enjoy.
Talk to you soon.
Bye. No. Geographically? Geographically. This is cool. So I would say make sure that pretty face is showing.
Yes, true.
They're going to want to see that thing. They're going to want to see that thing, Alan. That face. You good? Ready? Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another very special, as always, episode of the Hyperconscious Podcast. We have a very special guest today. He is a modern-day philosopher. He's a speaker, a coach, a next-level martial artist, and an entrepreneur. Mr. Jesse Elder, how are you doing, my friend?
Very happy to be here, gentlemen. This has been some anticipation building up to this. I'm glad that we could line it up.
Yeah, so just for the listeners real quick, evidently it's important when you try to set up an interview with somebody that you get their number, which I didn't do. And moving forward, I will use that as a lesson learned.
Hashtag fail forward.
That's right.
So, Jesse, one thing I really, when I dug into researching you, I went all through your YouTube page and your website, which is Next Level. And on your website, you have these things called Mind Vitamins. And they're these short videos, different themes, different lessons. And on one of them, you're sitting at the edge of a cliff and you're talking about stress. And you're talking about how much it helps to really disconnect from that stress and get out into nature. And I know definitely for me, I don't get out enough. I'm so focused on working. I'm so focused on growing and bringing this business up. Other than getting out in nature, what is a good way for somebody to relieve stress? Like, what else do you do?
Yeah, this is like the hardest answer for people to get, and I say this in trainings. People pay a lot of money for private days, and they fly from all over the world, and I'll say the same thing here. Nothing. Nothing. That sounds defeatist. Oh God, there's nothing I can do. No. Literally, let's go back and hear that word again. What can I do to eliminate stress? Nothing. Okay. So you're saying there's nothing I can do? No.
Do nothing.
Do nothing. Okay. So wait. Okay. So what you're saying is, Jesse, what you're saying is I got to light my incense and I got to cross my legs in the 3/8 quarter lotus position, which kills my ACL, but I got to do it anyway. And then I have to breathe in and do a certain ice breathing or something. And then I have to do my unicorn visual. Is that it? No, mother trucker. No, that's not it. Literally do nothing. And it's hard as hell for people to get. However, if you can just hang in there and do nothing for like 20 minutes, all your natural resources start to bubble up to the surface. Your brain waves settle down from beta to alpha, maybe even from alpha down into that sweet delta frequency. Your nervous system starts to regulate, your heart rate slows down, your body stops producing cortisol and adrenaline. You begin to naturally produce dopamine and serotonin and oxytocin, and all of a sudden you're back in your natural fucking frequency, which is the place that you were born in, and it's only 20 minutes away, and it's free, which is why nobody talks about it, because they can't monetize it.
I love
Ridiculous.
it. I love it. Do you think? I think one thing, and I'll admit this to the listeners, even though I'm not proud of it, but sometimes when I say, okay, I'm just going to sit here and turn off my brain, next thing I know, I'm on Instagram, and
Totally.
20 minutes has passed. So
Yep.
do you have, what is your practice in regards to social media? Do you have it's times throughout the day that you use it and then you get off of it?
Yeah, what I suggest is somebody just handcuff themselves to a bed and just give the maid the key or something. Say, hey, let me out in 20 minutes.
Perfect.
No. It really, and again, there's an idea that we're kind of conditioned to by the meditation community and all this stuff, and that is that we're supposed to turn our brain off, and if we don't, then we somehow failed. I think that's totally erroneous. I think it makes no sense to turn your brain off. So instead, if you can notice that you want to be on social, and then just say, okay, cool, I want to, and I'll do it in a minute. And then when you find yourself, I've done this billions of times, I'm like, all right, time to chill, meditation, here we go. Or I'm just going to sit and just be present right after I check my phone. And then I'm on my phone, and I'm like, oh, interesting. Let me put my phone down. And no joke, I've had 20-minute segments where I set my timer, and I've had to put down my phone like 8 times. But every time I notice that I have my phone in my hand again, and I recognize that I'm doing it, I put it down. And every time I put it down, I just don't judge it. It's like, hey, that's the natural momentum of 21st century. And we can gently opt ourselves out of that a few seconds at a time. And after a couple of, times of doing that, you actually look forward to it, because then you start to think your own thoughts and you start to feel your own feelings, and you begin to get in tune with your own desires and your own values, and that is inherently thrilling in itself.
So we just watched a video before this interview where you talk about the best next thing. It was very fascinating. Can you go into that for our listeners?
Yeah. This is one of those super simple, like, holy shit, how did I go my whole life and not know this? But it's right there in front of us. Most of us are sort of used to settling. I want the Ferrari, but I can't afford it, so let me get whatever, another car. I really want to date that person, but I think they're out of my league, so let me start here. I really want my body to have this level of energy, but fill in the blank with the excuse du jour, so I'll just settle for that. And we sort of live in a culture of settling, which is disguised as working on it. I'm working on it. I'm getting there. And so most of us are so used to settling for the next best thing versus the best next thing. It might sound like the same thing, but they are worlds apart. The next best thing versus the best next thing. And it's not just semantics. The best next thing implies that there is a choice that we can make right now that will lead to more relief, to a greater sense of clarity, a little bit greater confidence, maybe a little bit more self-esteem, and maybe some more productivity. There's something that we can do from any spot in our day that is the best next thing. And maybe it's to get present and just to stop moving for a few seconds. Maybe it's to do the thing you've not been wanting to do. Maybe it's to go work out. Maybe it's to hydrate. But there's always one thing that we can do that is the best next thing. And when you do that, even if it's the smallest seeming thing, that shifts your progress. It shifts your momentum. And that's worth noting, because if you can shift 1 degree and think a little bit better thought that feels a little less scary or a little less overwhelming, that's huge, because you just exercised your own free will and you just moved into some improved frequency. And if you can do that, well, you can do it again. And you can do it again, and you can do it again. So instead of comparing ourselves to this ultimate ideal, which is very pumped up by the personal development industry, go big, be larger than life, blah, blah, blah. No, it's not about that. That's great for selling seminars, but it creates a horrible dopamine crash when people leave the seminar. Instead, just be cool with where you're at, knowing that it's always changing and you can control which direction is changing if you'll just practice this best next thing.
For the listeners, I know you're probably thinking, all right, Jesse is next level. He's super deep. I understand why you said he's a philosopher, but he also has a very heavy background in martial arts. So when you were 9, you started, and by the time you were 20, you had done hundreds of matches. You were traveling around the United States and Mexico, and you ended up at one point having and doing bare knuckle fights without weight limits, without rules, no holds barred in Mexico. So I feel like you have a very high level of confidence, and I want to know if any or all of that came from fighting, and what did you learn from fighting and martial arts in general?
Yeah. So that whole journey, which it sounds really really clean and nice when it's compressed into reading a bio, but it really I didn't set out to do any of it. It was always just following that best next thing. What is the thing that is compelling? What do I feel compelled to do? So I did all these tournaments when I was a kid and growing up, and it was really fun. It was Taekwondo and Olympic Taekwondo, and I loved it. And I have so much respect for those sports, but that's what they are. They're sports. And it became apparent to me through some interesting experiences that I actually didn't know how to defend myself. I didn't know how to fight. I was a competitor, but I didn't know anything about self-defense or real life, interaction, real life physical confrontation. And so I started adjusting my training. I thought, I either have to learn to do this stuff for real and stop lying to myself and say I'm a good fighter when I'm really a good competitor. Totally different. It's like watching the Weather Channel versus being in a hurricane. It's two completely different things. And so I thought, man, I have to figure this out. So I started training differently, and I started training jiu-jitsu and Krav Maga, and I started doing all of these different things. And then there was a club, nightclub that I was a bouncer at when I was 20 years old. And one night, the club, or one week, they decided that they're going to start rolling out these matches, which are no holds barred. And MMA was, becoming more popular, and they thought, hey, this will really help things on a slow night. So they did this thing where it was no rules. They rolled a mat out on the dance floor, and they had one of the bouncers who stood there basically just to protect the speakers, because there's no need for a referee. There's no rules, no time limit, no weight limit, no safety equipment. And as soon as I heard about this event, experience, whatever, I knew that I had to do it, because I'm at that point I was teaching people. I was teaching private lessons and teaching classes, and I thought I was teaching people how to protect themselves, but I, for myself, didn't know. And so it became a sort of integrity issue. I either have to find out if I can do this, or I have to stop teaching, because I'll be completely out of integrity. And so this was the opportunity to take all the training that I'd done and to find out if I actually know my stuff. So that first night I got out there and no gloves, no safety equipment. I mean, you're wearing a cup and a mouthpiece basically. And it was educational, because you find out real quick what works and what doesn't. And the first guy that I matched up against was a little bit bigger, kind of wild-eyed, crazy looking guy, and he just came at me like the proverbial spider monkey on Mountain Dew, and he just like came at me, and I was like, oh shit. But then training takes over. You're only as good as your last training, and I've been training with really good guys. So we go down to the mat. I secured some positions, threw a couple of punches. He reacted predictably. I managed to submit him, and then that was it. It was way easier actually than training. And the second guy that I fought had never really been in the ring before. He'd never really been experienced that level of physicality. And like Mike Tyson said back in the 90s, everybody's got a plan until they get punched.
Yep.
And I just happened to have a little more training than he did, so I won. And all of a sudden, just like that, in one night, I went from being completely scared out of my mind. What would I do? Well, all of a sudden, now I had this new experience based on training and based on actually putting myself in the ring, and I became addicted. Not to the violence of it, but I became addicted to the relationship between training and performance. And I realized that, wow, I have this whole laboratory now. Every week when I'm training, I can adjust my thoughts. I started meditating and journaling and changed my nutrition and my fitness regimen and my training. All of it changed, and I could see the result the next Thursday night when the fight would happen. And I did that for an entire summer. I fought like 9 different fights, and or 11 different fights. I won 9, lost 2, and that really it was a very foundational experience for my life, because I didn't set out to become a philosopher. I just wanted to win some tournaments, and I just wanted to, prove to myself what I could do. But I began to see the correlation between training and performance, and that just made me a fanatic about training. And I started to wonder, well, what else can I train on? I wonder if I can train to be a better teacher. Well, turns out I can. I wonder if I can train to become better in communicating, so that instead of fumbling through an enrollment presentation to sign somebody up, I could actually ask intelligent questions that made them more desirous to enroll. And so then my income started going up. And then I thought, well, I wonder if I can train myself to be a better leader and show other people how I've done this. So I did. So it was always just based on that, going back to that basic principle of the best next thing. I didn't have a 20-year vision. I didn't have any of that. I just know, hey, this feels right for me. I've accomplished some things that I think might be useful for other people. Let me find out. And to this day, all the Mind Vitamin videos, and the last month we had just over 60 million people consume those videos. But that's a byproduct of following this best next thing, not a fulfillment of some grand vision.
Before Alan asks his question, the listeners, if you were in the room with us, Jesse, you would see a giant smile on my face, because I'm a huge fan of boxing, mixed martial arts, jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai, all that stuff. So that was one of the things that really, really resonated highly with me, the fact that you are so intelligent, but you're also unbelievably capable with your body and self-defense. So I wanted to touch on that before Alan asked this question.
Well, I appreciate that. To me, it actually seems... for my own life, it seems unintelligent to only develop one aspect of my being to the disservice of the other aspects. I believe that if you're improving one area, that gives you more potential to improve in all the others, and then it becomes a self-reinforcing sort of symphony of mind, body, and spirit.
So, as Kevin could tell by my body language, I have so many questions that are kind of like with that just came up. So bear with me here. This might be a little long-winded. So you said I didn't feel that I could keep integrity with myself without doing this.
Right.
I want to go deeper on that, because I think in this culture, Kevin and I say it on this podcast, personal development in general, right? You keep talking about training. You're only as good as your last training. And staying within integrity with yourself is very close to whatever you associate your identity to, your core values, all that kind of stuff. And then you call yourself a philosopher. So first question is, what does philosophy actually mean to you? Because it's not this crazy esoteric thing that people make it out to be with Lucius Seneca and Marcus Aurelius and all that stuff. So what does philosophy mean to you? And then we'll go off that.
Sure. Real simple. Philosophy is mental operating code. That's all philosophy is. Philosophy is mental operating code.
So
the human OS is a collection of philosophies and concepts.
I love it. Okay, so I actually thought of this at the gym the other day, and I was thinking to myself, like, okay, so I was an electrical and computer engineer in undergrad, and all machinery, computers, technology is basically trying to replicate biology. And so computers have a processor, they have RAM, they have a hard drive, right? And if the software on the computer is not correct for the given task that you want the computer for, in other words, the computer's purpose, then it's going to be errors, right? So for you, correct me if I'm wrong, but what you're saying is that given your own self-awareness of who you are and what you want to be in this world, you need to update your software with your own training?
Yes, and I really appreciate you bringing in the metaphor of machinery and computers, because computers, even... Well, we won't get into qubits and quantum computers and everything at this point yet, but even computers are really bound by Newton's laws, which are increasingly being disproven.
Yes,
and so I believe that a human being is far more than a collection of molecules that somehow learned to think. And so I think we actually are much more receivers and transmitters of vibrational energy and frequency than we are a container that needs to be upgraded, et cetera. So the metaphor is a little bit of a stretch, but philosophy is essentially human operating software. And that includes principles and values, beliefs, paradigms, all of those things. And just by upgrading your philosophy, same way as you upgrade your OS on your phone, you have access to increased capabilities, and there is literally no upper limit on that.
That is so fire. For the listeners out there, if you ever tried using Windows Vista trying to get something done, like that's why personal development and being a philosopher, like a modern day philosopher, I honestly think we should all consider ourselves philosophers, because then as soon as we do, now all of a sudden we're going to be proactively trying to download really incredible belief systems and thoughts from really world-renowned people, and just downloading a bunch of smart crap from really smart people. So my next question,
or from our own experiences, which is the ultimate source of wisdom.
So that actually is a perfect segue. So you talk about self-confidence. Kevin already brought this up. We watched a video about what real self-confidence is, and you said that you don't fake it till you make it, which I really appreciate, because I agree very wholeheartedly with that. So staying in integrity with yourself, you say you need to create proof and then notice the proof. So stacking those small wins. I think a lot of people understand that if I want to be confident, I have to go and do things that I'm successful at. But I don't think they stop enough and reflect on those successes to really feel them. Can you go into something you do in your own life to really, maybe before some big fight or some big event, that gives you confidence?
Yeah, it's a really a daily practice, and I think it's a really good point. Your confidence is the byproduct of evidence. The more evidence you have, that's really where confidence comes from. So confidence is not a prerequisite for peak performance or for doing something difficult. Confidence is the result. It's the residue of doing something. And the cool part is that you don't even need something recent. All you have to do is activate the frequency of appreciation, activate the feeling of accomplishment, and either using your imagination or your memory, you can literally just think of a time that you did something that was kind of badass. And you can, in thinking about it, without comparing it to where you want to be or anything else like that, you can actually activate that frequency, and you start to feel those feelings. And then you start to remember, oh shit, I kind of did pretty good on that thing. I kind of am a badass in this area. And then boom, you're there. And then you start to feel that. And then you, from that place of improved frequency and improved vibration, then you approach your next training with a sense of eager anticipation. There's no need to suffer in training at all, whether it's learning guitar or jiu-jitsu or learning how to be a better lover or a better chef. These are all skills that anybody can learn and assimilate. But it's so much more pleasurable and it's so much more sustainable when you're enjoying the training and enjoying the practice versus delaying your joy until you develop some skill, and then you're going to go out in the real world and win. There's no...
Oh, go ahead, Jesse. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. There's no need to suffer. It's the bottom line. Suffering is a choice.
Literally, right before we started recording, I went to the bathroom and I was literally thinking to myself, and I try to do this often before podcasts. I imagine that the podcast just finished and the feeling that I'm feeling, and it's ecstatic, and we added so much value, and the guest was so awesome, and we built this connection, and Alan was freaking out a little bit when we were having phone issues, and I was just like chilling, and I really believe that you can prime your mind with the right thoughts, because most of us are thinking, everybody's thinking something, and I feel like most people's thoughts aren't really serving them, they're actually holding them back.
Well, you get good at whatever you practice, and this especially includes thoughts.
That's so true.
When did that shift for you in terms of treating, like the way you just said that, you made it sound like thinking is an action that you can practice. When did that shift for you? When did you become, for lack of better phrasing, hyperconscious, philosophical, personal development?
Shameless plug.
Yeah, shameless plug. I went through a really fantastic evolutionary experience when I was in my early 20s. This is after the fighting, and I had opened my first school, my martial arts school, and I was really depressed. Like it just was caving in on me. I couldn't get myself out of bed in the mornings. Thank God I had class to go teach. Otherwise, I don't know. I mean, I might not be here honestly. It was such a dark period of my life. I was questioning everything, questioning my existence, questioning why the fuck am I even alive? What's the purpose of this? I'm a mistake, blah, blah, blah. And it just kept collapsing in on itself. And I realized that, wow, there's just no end to this bottom. There's no bottom. There's no end to this darkness. And I stopped resisting it. I was like, you know what? If this is my life, this is my life. And I just stopped resisting. And the weird thing is, as I stopped resisting it and just felt it, I stopped judging the feeling and just felt the feeling. And then the feeling made me present. And I started to be present to bigger questions. Well, why am I here? If I don't know why I'm here, why am I here? Boom. And I became aware that I was asking a different question, thinking a different thought. And little by little, over a period of weeks, I became conscious of the thoughts I was thinking. And then it hit me that thoughts become feelings. Whatever thought you think consistently becomes a feeling. And I started to trace the dots. I feel depressed. Well, it's because I was practicing depression. I was practicing these thoughts and practicing these behaviors that would bloom and blossom and mature into the biochemical reality called depression. And so one day I just stood in front of the mirror and I was like, I wonder what else I can practice. So I started practice boredom. And I got to boredom. It's not that far from depression. And then from boredom, I got to curiosity, and I could practice that. And then I practiced myself from curiosity into sort of anticipation, and then from anticipation to appreciation, and from appreciation into eagerness, and from eagerness to enthusiasm, and from enthusiasm into full-blown joy and bliss. And then I thought, wow, I wonder if I can be depressed again. 10 minutes later, I was right back there. And I was like, fuck me, man. This is all I'm doing, all of this. Wow. And that's when I really became free.
It really is about, so this is going to be a selfish question. This is something that I was so excited to ask you, because when I ask people this, they think I have lost my mind. But when you start asking yourself the bigger questions and the why am I here and what is this all for thing, when I have a bad day, Jesse, I literally sit back and I say, you are on a rock that's spinning through the universe, and like, it doesn't matter that that girl rejected you. It doesn't matter that today wasn't a great day. It's like this whole thing is a miracle at the end of the day. And when you start, you don't have to use it as an excuse. Maybe just use it as perspective. But that really helps me realize, like, okay, it's not the end of the world. Like, this is a fucking miracle.
That's a brilliant tool. It's a brilliant tool to just get a different reference and to realize that just the fact that you can think the thought proves that you exist. And since nothing blinks from unmanifest into the manifest, since nothing goes from nothing to something without a purpose, that means that since you have thoughts to think, and you've got a brain to think about those thoughts, it means you exist. And that means you do have a purpose, even if you don't know what it is. So if you don't know what your purpose is, well, that's your next level boss that you get to go beat. Find your purpose. And the answer to that is as simple as sitting down, writing out, and reading over and over and over. I want to know why I'm here. I want to know my purpose. I want to know my purpose. I want to know my purpose, and be relentless with that. It will be revealed to you. You'll get the upgrade, and next thing you know, all that the other bullshit goes away.
So that is, you're blowing my mind. This is phenomenal. So I love that people.
Well,
like
we
you,
can make it more complex. You know, we can make a 9-day seminar where everybody has to go through all sorts of gyrations to act like, you know, it's hard, but it's really not.
So I was saying to just the other night with one of my clients on the phone, I said everything in nature serves a purpose, right? The mosquitoes feed the spiders feed the birds feed, you know, my buddy's cat who takes down birds, but like. And we serve a purpose too. Do you believe that we come into this world with a purpose, or do you believe that we choose one? And also, I want to ask you what you believe at this stage of your life your purpose is.
Yeah, that was really brilliantly said. Everything does have a purpose, and the difference between us and all of these other creatures is that nature operates according to lines of instinct. You know, an acorn becomes an oak tree, etc. It doesn't really have a choice. It operates along pre-programmed patterns, pre-programmed lines. Human beings don't believe have any inherent purpose. I do believe that reality is a blank canvas that we are projecting our intentions onto, and reality then takes that and bounces it back to us in physical form that we can see and hear and taste and touch and drive in and spend and sleep with and eat and all these other kind of things. And that we are the reflection of other people's creations too. And so this dialogue is the inevitable result of your intentions, of the intentions of a listener, of my intentions. And so here we are in this sort of, three-way co-creation, you guys, me, and the listener, and we're taking conversation further than it's ever been before, because you guys have never been exactly where you're at. I've never been exactly where I'm at right now. The listener's never been exactly where they're at. And here we are, fucking fresh on the leading edge of creation. And we're creating it as we go. And so there is no purpose of life. It's purpose of life is to create your life. There's not an inherent meaning, except unless people choose to abdicate and to give away their power, in which case there's plenty of people in the world that would be happy to take up the role of telling others why they're here. And then usually that gets monetized and turned into a religion.
Interesting. I have a question, Jesse. So in several of the places I've done my research, the word time piercer always comes up. What is that in regards to, and how does that relate to you?
Yeah, time piercing is a very, very curious phenomenon, very curious philosophy. I came upon the word, or the word happened to me, actually. I was in a bookstore in Southern California a couple of years ago, and I was just literally walking around the store, and this idea just hit me in the head. Like the word hit me in the head. Is very, very kinesthetic, very physical. And I never had that experience before. And the word was time piercing. And it was so odd. It was so loud. Like it wasn't like clairaudient. I didn't hear it. It was just, it hit me. And I got my phone out. I'm like, what the fuck is this word? So I got my phone out and I started Googling time piercing. I couldn't find anything on it. I got down to like the third page of Google, which is no man's land. and there was it was some arcane reference to some video game character's ring or something. I was like, wow, how is this so vivid? And yet it doesn't seem to exist, at least on Google. So I began just to play with that word, and I began to write the word down on our journal and look at it like, what does it mean? What does it mean? And I began to get more and more ideas about what it meant, and it culminated in this concept that everything is happening all simultaneously, and that what we call the past is actually still happening right now, just elsewhere. And what we think is the future that hasn't happened yet, well, it's happening as well, just elsewhere. And so it's very similar to, right now, let's say you're sitting in a chair and your feet are on the ground and your ass is in the chair, and, maybe your hand is holding your phone. So you can accurately say you are touching the floor, the chair, the phone simultaneously. You're in all three places at once. But how can that be? Because how can you be in the floor and the chair and on the phone? Well, because you're bigger than any of those three places. So it's easy to see, using that metaphor, that you are the phone, you are touching the phone, the chair, the floor, all at the same time. Well, what if what we think is real, this life that we can see and taste and touch, and we assume that our body and our mind, as we understand it, and our brain and our perception, we assume that this is it. But what if it's not? What if just like you have 10 fingers and you could theoretically put each finger in a different temperature liquid and be getting the composite experience, even though you're having 10 different experiences? Well, what if your consciousness, your soul, your inner being, your higher self, what if your inner being is so badass that it said, you know what, I want to have all these experiences at once. So I'm going to play a symphony called being a human, except I'm going to multiply my consciousness out over this perhaps infinite range. And so I'm going to be a 5-year-old and a 20-year-old and an 80-year-old and a 175-year-old. And I'm going to be a 6-month-old. And I'm going to be all of that at once. And through this uniquely human experience, gift of imagination and memory, I can connect with those other versions of me at any given node on this grid, whether it's called past or future. It's all happening simultaneously. That changed, it changed everything for me, because then I started to think about my future not as some possible potential fake thing that I was pretending, but I began to experience it as a vivid, real, as real as this dialogue is. We've never met like in real life, but this is a live thing. You're in that room, I'm in this room, and through the miracle of technology, we're having this conversation. I began to realize that I could have those conversations with other versions of me that were elsewhere on this playing field. And I began to get information that was unbelievably accurate. I began to weaponize my intuition for swift deployment of plans and ideas. And I began to architect a sort of on-demand deja vu. So I could walk into a room and go, yep, I remember this. Except I was getting a future memory. I was getting a memory of my future self, thinking back to me walking into the room for the first time.
So we just did an episode yesterday, 2 days ago. Today's Wednesday, 2 days ago, on visualization. And we played the what if game. And it's funny because in the preamble, we were watching a video of you on the beach and you were talking about what if this, and visualization. So in kind of congruence with what you just described, what do you do in your life to visualize potential futures in your attempt to manifest more of what you desire?
Yeah, great question. There's a couple of loops there. The manifestation, for my understanding of it, is that we don't make things happen through action. Action is how you enjoy what's already happening. Action is how you enjoy what's already been set in motion. So action is the least and last most important element of manifestation and creating. The most important is vibration and alignment. So I don't try and create the future. I just open myself up to receive the best ideas from the version of me that's already living it. So that version of me can remember back to me today. And in that memory, which I experience from here as an imagination, then I know exactly what to do. And I have total clarity on who, what, why, where, when, how, all that jazz.
For the listeners, this is like deep stuff, but it's beautifully, your answers and the way you understand yourself are mind-blowing, Jesse. Like, I'm gonna have to take a nap after this if I'm being totally honest. But
that's the best next thing.
Here's the thing, it is, and I'm really glad you mentioned that, because this is high frequency information. It's incredibly high frequency. And I don't say that, that's not superiority, that's not ego on my part. This is just information that changes your brain. It changes your biochemistry. Yeah. It changes your beliefs. It dissolves neuropeptides. It dissolves low-lying irrational fears. You literally shift the channel on your reality, and you start to become the brightest, baddest, best, most cool, sexy, rich, wealthy, free-flowing, vibing, vibrant, happy version of you, because you can. And there's nowhere to get to. It's all right here. Just like all songs are available on Spotify, except Taylor Swift, sadly. all those songs are available, but you can only play one song at a time. And we are the receiving and transmitting apparatus, our brains and our bodies. And you can tune to whatever reality you want, starting with the thoughts you think, then the feelings you feel. And so, yes, after hearing a dialogue like this, taking a nap is very often the best thing to do, because then it allows you to integrate.
Beautiful. So you have an unbelievable control of your own mind and your own destiny and your own manifestation. How do you use that? Or I don't want to say use, because I don't want it to seem like it's cheating, but how does that
totally
carry
cheating.
over? But in a relationship, for example, how does that carry over into a relationship where I always say a relationship's a two-player game, so it's always a little bit harder than anything you're doing alone. And I think in today's day and age, Alan and I have the very unique perspective of, people reach out to us as they do you, and they tell us these stories of, I waited so long to get out of the relationship, I settled for all this time. And it's like, what are your experiences with relationships? Maybe not specifics, but in regards to how deep you are mentally with yourself, like how does that carry over to a relationship for you?
Yeah, I've had a fair amount of experiences, I guess. It's, everybody's different. I was married for 11 years. That was my first relationship. I actually was never in a relationship until I got married at 27, and that seemed like the right thing to do. And at the time it was. And after 11 years, it became clear to both of us that we were just growing in different directions. So I made the choice to dissolve the relationship and change the relationship. And it all unfolded in perfect time. Today, as my life unfolds, I've really avoided any sort of labeling of a relationship, and so there are, and to be specific, there are women that I have in my life who I have a very deep connection with, that may or may not include physical, a physical encounter or physical intimacy. I for the most part, don't place very much emphasis on what the label of the relationship is. It's much more about the frequency and the energy. And so, for the I'm thinking of one person in particular. The connection that I experienced with this woman is like nothing I've ever experienced. And at first it blew me away. I was like, whoa, what is this? But then, think about it. Whatever you practice, you're going to get better at. And I've been practicing love and being loving and allowing myself to receive love for, I'm on level 45 of this avatar. I've unlocked 45 levels, one level per year. So every level, you unlock. Mm-hmm. And I've been playing, I'm on level 45. Of course, I'm going to be better at it now than I was when I was at level 26. Mm. And so I expect I'm going to keep getting better and better at it. So is it any surprise that I'm going to attract somebody into my life who resonates and vibrates at the same frequency I do, to the point that it's uncanny, that I feel like I'm talking to myself, that there's no friction, that there's an absolute alignment, and there's also no expectation. There's no container. There's no, we don't say, I love you. There's none of that. It's just like, I see you. I recognize you. I see your energy. I appreciate your energy. And the best part is you see your own power, and you're not relying on me for power. In fact, if somebody says to me, I love you, and they expect to hear it back, they're probably not going to hear it back, because maybe I'm not feeling loving in that moment. And I don't feel like saying it. And if I do say it and I'm not feeling it, then I'm cheapening the entire concept.
Interesting. So you talk a lot about reverting to your training and practicing. I love the analogy of level 26 versus level, I think you said 45. So yep. Assuming that each year of your life you're practicing these things, in your case you were practicing being loving and receiving love. So my question for you is for the listeners and for myself, which is, how do we know what to practice based on what we want more of in our life?
Yeah, whatever feels good.
Whatever feels good. What if I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm curious, because a lot of the things that feel good, like maybe eating donuts, aren't good for us in the long run. So can we go a little deeper?
Well, how do we know
that they're not?
How do
good?
we know? How do we know they're not good?
I mean, it depends. I mean, the potential outcome is. I love donuts too. I'm just like
the potential outcome for who? This is very important. Based on what information?
Based on so if you want to live a long, healthy life, eating just donuts, even though they feel good, is probably not a good thing for that result.
This is very, very important. According to who?
According to the studies that I've done on physiology.
Correct. Which is other people's experience.
Yes. Okay.
Or
my own as well.
And then that's the far more valid data set.
Oh, okay.
Averages are for average people. Statistics are the residue of other people's expectations and manifestations.
Going deep here. I like this.
Yeah, this is interesting.
I like this. I like the fact that we just dug deeper into that in just like a explorative way. This has been a super explorative podcast. I am loving this, Jesse.
It's pretty good.
This.
So you also talked about two different dynamics that I found really fascinating. Sorry.
No, you're good.
Okay,
you're
cool.
Because
Kevin's looking at me like, here we go.
No.
Yeah. So you said if you want to be productive, and that's the outcome, you can be the, give up, go with the flow type of person. Or you can be, I need to do everything perfectly and put yourself in your own prison. Isn't it kind of a dance between those two extremes where we're all living at all times? I mean, for you, how do you stay productive with just doing what feels good when sometimes, like a hard workout that will get you closer to your goals doesn't always feel good at the tail end?
Yeah, this is also very, very important. There is a fundamental distinction between pain and suffering. Pain is simply feedback.
Okay.
Suffering is judgment and story about that experience.
Yeah, the meaning you associate, right?
Yeah, and what you're feeling, because you can feel physical pain while feeling emotional bliss.
Okay.
Beautiful. You just have to stop identifying yourself as your body. You have a body, but you're not your body. And so, I mean, I'm here in LA for a while, and I got a hotel downtown because I wanted to train at 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu. I love 10th Planet. I'm a huge fan of Eddie Bravo.
Yes.
And 10th Planet is my favorite jam. I love 10th Planet. Go 10th Planet. So I walked from my hotel. I walked to go train. And it was great. I mean, the drills and the flow and everything else. And yes, there's some cardio involved. And yes, I'm getting tired. And yes, I'm pushing it. But inside, man, and on the outside, I have this just wicked grin. Like, I'm so happy to have this experience. There's nowhere else I'd rather be. And that's the definition, or a definition, of suffering, is wishing you were somewhere else.
Interesting. Yeah, I love it.
So if you just don't wish you were somewhere else, you're not suffering. So, I mean, I do things that on the outside, somebody might say, oh God, he has to do all those things. You're not me. They're not me. They don't know what I'm experiencing. And so even in the midst of heartache and heartbreak and all this stuff, man, my soul is smiling so big, like, go Team Human. This is just data. This is fucking just great. It's a great story. And then it pops. The pain goes away, right back to this natural frequency of bliss, except you've been expanded so much, and now your heart's even more open and able to receive and give even more love, because that's an infinite channel. So it's not about ever imprisoning oneself and doing something you don't want to do. It's lining up your energy so that you're only doing things that you want to do.
My goodness, Jesse, I feel like we could do a marathon podcast here. This could be a 24-hour thing, but we're running towards the end. So I want to make sure Alan and I get our final two questions. Then you can plug away everything that's going on in your life. So I will ask you my question quickly.
Awesome.
We're put on this earth by whatever miracle. We get the chance to live 90, 100, 150 years if that's what we want. What do you hope to accomplish with your life in the time on this planet?
I accomplished that the moment I was born.
Interesting.
Most unique answer yet, for sure.
Jesse, you're fascinating. Go ahead. You wanted to expand on that?
Well, it's just that, I mean, I don't make much distinction anymore between physical life and non-physical life. I mean, some of my best friends don't have bodies anymore.
You best friends is in like people you read and like. So are you an Einstein
No,
fan?
like, not really.
No.
No. Tesla.
I'm curious as to who your heroes are. I'm very curious. So, what about Wayne Dyer? You a Wayne Dyer fan?
No.
Okay.
I'm not really a fan very much.
Okay. Who do you read? Do you read a lot of the transcendentalists and stuff like that? Just curious. No.
No.
Over 5.
I know, right? Interesting. So, if I were to ask you who are your heroes, do you have any?
No.
Interesting. Okay. So we'll transition into my next question. I think that this has been a very fascinating conversation for me. This has been mind expanding for sure. So I thank you for that. So my last question, I wear this True North necklace around my neck. I believe that we grow, we change, we evolve, we adapt. But I do believe there's a part of us that never changes, you know. What about you? Never changed.
That's a good one. I believe that the base frequency, call it intuition, call it your true self, your authentic self, there's a core resonance to that. And it's like an always on sort of GPS signal. And when we make decisions that are in alignment with that, we feel good. When we make decisions that are out of alignment with it, we feel bad. And we're the only one that knows what that feeling feels like, which means nobody outside of us is qualified to tell us what's right for us or not. And so I think that signal always remains, even though personalities evolve, values shift, beliefs expand, habits form and dissolve, bodies change, money changes, relationships, all of that morphs and shifts, but that base frequency is always the same. Call it God, call it source, call it infinite intelligence, call it whatever you want to call it, whatever word humans use to try and describe the indescribable. That feeling is always there, and it's always present if we'll allow it in.
So if you're listening to this now, I hope you've been as blown away as we have. If you want to go deeper with Jesse, where can people find you, your website, where can they book you? Everything.
Yeah, pretty simple. Our team has done a great job at making things pretty accessible. JesseElder.com. Also, Facebook is a great place. Just look up Jesse Elder. Instagram, Jesse Elder Live. And there is a couple of different groups that I'm working with. I'm increasingly devoting my time and energy towards people who have made their own commitments beyond a sort of superficial glance, people that actually want to go deeper, that want to train And I've put together a couple of groups for that. There's a group called Legacy, which is like a good entry level to these concepts. And there's another group called Amplifiers, which takes it to really granular training on your mind, your body, your wealth, your sex life, your physical energy, your social skills, your business or your entrepreneurship. Amplifiers is really intense. Best way to get information on that is just shoot me an email, timepiercer@icloud.com.
See, I wanted to say something about your email, but I didn't want to give it away. I was going to say
I
Time
appreciate
Piercer
that.
is one of those things. So I want to thank you so much, Jesse, because Alan and I were looking at each other throughout this entire podcast, and this has definitely been the deepest, most philosophical episode we've done. This is episode number 105 or 6 at this point. So I want to thank you for coming on and being super patient with our phone that shit the bed.
It's been a blast. You guys did a really great job just riffing and keeping it open. And as far as it being deep, I think we're going to look back, or maybe we are looking back at some point in the future, and this stuff's going to be common stuff. It's not going to be revolutionary or revelatory. It's just going to be yeah.
Right.
And it really just is not about ascending and trying to get something we don't have. It's about releasing and deleting things that just aren't working anymore. Just like we all used to wear diapers and now we don't because it's just not appropriate anymore. Same thing with beliefs like work is hard, money's hard to make, love is rare, jealousy is needed, blah, blah, blah. Those are cool and those are valid perceptions if they're serving you. But if they're not, put them down and try something else.
Well, maybe in another 105 episodes, we'll do this again and we'll look back and we'll have a whole new set point to work off of.
And that one would be in person.
I would welcome that.
That would be in person. One thing I want to say to the listeners before, and then we'll let you go, Jesse. Philosophy, there's a Jim Rohn quote that I always go back to that this helps me, and Jesse, you can probably piggyback on this quickly for our listeners. I think that being on the phone with a modern-day philosopher, the quote is this: the wind blows on us all. It's not the wind, it's the set of the sail. And the set of the sail will determine your direction and therefore your destination or your destiny. I think that, like you just said, if something you're believing or thinking is no longer serving your greatest level of contribution, your greatest purpose, your greatest feeling good, try to shift that. And that's what this podcast is all about. Change your thoughts and you will change your life. So thank you, Jesse. I really appreciate you.
It was such a pleasure, guys, and good luck with everything. I'm sure that this is going to continue to become even more popular. Just your style is on point, and I think there's a lot of value here for people.
Oh, we appreciate that. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Jesse Elder.
Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Boom.
Ladies and gentlemen, we hope you enjoyed our latest episode featuring Mr. Jesse Elder. Up next, we have a Small Talks episode featuring the word discipline.
One of my clients, Alex Hinkle, suggested the word discipline. I think this word has a negative connotation, but it's actually a really great word. You can have the pain of discipline today or the pain of regret tomorrow. If you want a bright, compelling future on your own terms, it's going to require discipline.
If you're struggling with discipline or vision, send me a message at NeverQuitKid on Instagram. We'll set you up for a 20-minute call, and we'll try to help you out.
Talk to you soon.
Bye. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so very much for listening to another episode of the Hyper Conscious Podcast.
Going hyper-conscious will absolutely change your life because if you understand why something is the way it is, now you have the power to change it. If you going hyper-conscious with us has changed your life in any way, please share this episode with one of your friends because the more people that go hyper-conscious, the better this world's going to be for everybody.
And if you would kindly leave us a 5-star review on iTunes, that would help us make more people hyper-conscious, and we would be greatly appreciative.
Thank you.
Bye.